Okay, so once again, good evening to everyone, and welcome to the 3-day workshop regarding LaTeX and how to use it. In terms of typesetting, their thesis. My name is Justice Kwame Apati, and my co-members who will be supporting me in this journey are also Professor Reginald Dua, as well as Dr. Isabel Mensah, and also Mr. Albert Doju, who will spend these 3 days taking you through LaTeX and how to use it. The video will be available to everyone who subscribed for the meeting for them to use them as some kind of guide for their journey. I want to bring to your attention why the need for this. I should assume that some years back, this lab was formed. And for some time now, we'll be using Word to process all our documents. But as we begin to grow from strength to strength, from year to year, we realize that it became so much difficult as supervisors to look into every student work, and all we are seeing is formatting issues. Issue of references, issue of sectioning, issue of table of content, issue of chapters, issue of alignment. And we didn't see the need to spend so much time going through every single work and just reporting issues of formatting, as opposed to spending time looking at the real content and allowing them to move out. So this year, the idea is to support all members of the lab to be able to understand how to use LaTeX to typeset their work, so that we can spend time as mentors, as supervisors, to review the core aspects of the work as compared to formatting issues. Now, given that we are beginning this with the lab, we thought it wise to extend this support to all other members who are interested in learning this journey or learning these tools and how to use them. For that reason, we made it available to everyone who wants to understand, so as to support them as compared to making it so private to only our lab members. This is the reason why today we are here, to be able to appreciate how these tools work and proceed from there. There are some templates that you and I will be exploring and understand how all the various parts can put together to give us a very nice and a well-structured content. Given that it is an academic exercise, it's important for us to at least understand some theory behind what this tool is about. It would be nice that you and I will understand the need for the tool, where it came from, why should we stop Word and come into LaTeX, why it's so important to move aside what we had and move into what we want to perceive. These are the questions that sometimes we ask ourselves. One may ask, whatever I can do here, I can equally do it on Word. But the argument here is, how much resource do we need to achieve that in the first place? This is why you and I want to explore some fundamentals. I'll spend the first 1 hour, which will mean 9 o'clock, I should be done with my section. And then the next speaker will begin to give us a hands-on experience. This journey promises to be hands-on, where you do according to what the instructors are doing. Post your questions, will help you out to come out clean and well. Understand that today's class or today's workshop, as well as tomorrow, as well as Wednesday, will give us the fundamentals, the basis to begin with it. We shall have another workshop within the year and look at the technical aspect of it, how to program the style file yourself, how to customize the style file yourself, how to customize the CLS file yourself, which requires some idea of programming to get it done. We believe that today, GPT have come to stay. For that reason, you should be able to proceed from this section. Where there's an error, how do you fix it? If something's not working out, how do you bring it on board? All these searches can be done with Gemini, with OpenAI, that the ChatGPT, and proceed from there. What we believe you don't have is the foundation. What we believe you don't have is the introduction. What we believe you don't have is the background. So we need someone to speak to you, and based on that, you can proceed from there. So the purpose of the workshop is to introduce you to the journey, and then you can now pedal along and get the work done for yourself. We'll try as much as possible to give ourselves an open desk, such that if you have any problem within the year, you can contact us and then we'll help you out as well. Okay, so we begin to look at what we plan for today. Feel free at the end of the session, ask your questions. We'll try as much as possible to respond to them and proceed from there accordingly. Okay. So in the section over here, you and I will be observing what LaTeX is all about, how to use it for your writing, why LaTeX, not Word, and then why LaTeX against Overleaf, against Word. We shall observe very soon that these first two are together in concept, so against Word. How do we compile? How do we install? And how do we now begin to use the editors for the video distributions? This is what I'll take you through, after which the next presenter will take you to the hands-on section. So let's see what we have for ourselves. Okay. So the introduction. What is LaTeX in the first place? As you can see, it's nothing but, let me get my pen activated and then we can proceed from there. As you can see, it's nothing but a high quality tool for typesetting. That's all it is. What goes into it in terms of the logics? Now over here, all you see is just some markup tags. And the tags are nothing but some kind of attributes which defines the structure of a document. This, unfortunately or fortunately, is done for you freely in Word. So just go in there, your margins, just get it down and proceed. But this one gives you additional elements that helps you to freely perform all the various components you want to see on the file and proceed from there as well. So what's the idea, the intuition behind LaTeX as opposed to Word file? So for the Word file, you get this acronym. What you see is what you get. In LaTeX, we have what you see is what you mean. So whatever that you are typing in there is exactly what you mean, and that's what will get produced to your documents for you. That's the philosophy behind the LaTeX as opposed to the Word file. Now, why LaTeX and not Word? Why LaTeX? As I've mentioned earlier on to you, consistency was very key to us in our lab. Somebody comes to us with a complete thesis, and as you inspect, the images are all scattered throughout. The captions are all moved out in the pages. The contents are kind of not well justified. The chapter, some are in the middle with font size 12, others 14, others 18. This is why LaTeX becomes important to us to maintain consistency over your styles, over your fonts, and proceed from there as well. Another beautiful thing about LaTeX is that it can handle over 200 pages with ease without it being corrupted. And the word corruption comes into play with stability. Stability. Why are we so much convinced about that? I tell people around me that go in and take Word file, save it as DOC, and save also the DOCX, and begin to open one in another. What you observe is that the encoding format for the DOC get distorted in DOCX, or the encoding format in DOCX get distorted in the DOC, which means over time, the content of your file can get corrupted. When it comes to LaTeX, you're actually coding in a normal text file, a normal plain text. So you can just take your notepad and start typing. You are good to go. Which means the content over there remains as they are for the next 60 years, next 100 years, and you are good to go. This is why, again, you want to come into LaTeX. Before I proceed from this why again, I want to explain something to you about an element here. Earlier on, you saw us saying LaTeX 2E or E. And today, you see even 3, the latest version, which is still in the pipeline, is 3. All the 2E, the E and the 3 refers to versions. They are versions. So take note of that. So you come across LaTeX, LaTeX E, LaTeX 2E, LaTeX 3. It doesn't matter. They are all LaTeX. Thirdly, when it comes to precision in mathematics, this is where, again, LaTeX becomes so useful to you. And most of us who find ourselves in the science field will always have to interact with math writings. Summation as x starts from 1 to say n on xn or on xp, for example, where p is defined. How do you write this in LaTeX? Some will argue that, of course, in today's world, MS Word allows us to enter LaTeX within MS Word. That's fine. But what are the easy way of doing that? Most often, we struggle to do that. For that reason, we go and make use of the mass type and proceed from there. All of this gets corrupted over time. And finally, citation management, where we introduce you to on the third day, the BibTeX and then the BibLaTeX, whichever way they are the same. Here, you have control over what you want to cite and how you want to cite it. Again, many will say, why not just go into Mendeley, EndNote, and the rest? When it comes to LaTeX, you also have what to call the jailbreak. That does that for us flawlessly and proceed from there. One thing that makes LaTeX scale well, or that makes LaTeX more of a priority over others, is really about consistency, scalability, and stability. Because these two can be argued that in Word, it can be done as well without stress. Okay. So at least if nothing at all, these 3 things should incentivize you to use LaTeX as opposed to Word. Now here we are with some few things to pay attention to: LaTeX, Overleaf, and Word. Their differences. In today's meeting or for this workshop, you and I will be using the Overleaf. And why? We shall observe that very soon. So the interface by feature As you can see, the word is very intuitive. Whatever you type is what you're going to get in it. Whatever you see, what you see is what you get. The visual part is so appealing. Click on this, click on that, or the clicks, then you are done. Unfortunately, in LaTeX, it's a code base. The markup, you must program it. You must type some few things to be able to get what you mean. Behind Overleaf is the LaTeX. However, this is a cloud base. And we are doing Overleaf because we don't want to struggle in between installations. We have only 3 days, and each day is 2 hours. So it will be very frustrating to spend time doing, my code cannot run. What about this? How do I install this? That becomes so much work for us. For that reason, you and I will go in for the Overleaf to avoid the issue of installation. Thankfully, it's also very free to use. But behind the Overleaf is LaTeX. So I tell people that see Overleaf as an interface to LaTeX. So I say LaTeX becomes the engine behind the Overleaf. Now the argument here is, if I intend to install LaTeX locally, how then do I proceed from there? Very soon we shall observe that as well. How to install. All because you observe that Overleaf requires internet to make it work. So you must be online to use it. What if I want to be on the local space and use it? That we shall share with you some sample steps, and they can proceed from there as well. So I'll share some scripts with you how to install it locally and the interface you need to interact with the tool. Okay, formatting. You must do this manually for yourself. But in LaTeX, as you type, everything comes out as expected. No more stress on formatting. No more stress on formatting. Thirdly, collaboration. Collaboration. Here, all you can do is your track change, unless you are going for the online version of Microsoft Word, the docs, to allow collaboration. Otherwise, you can virtually do nothing about that. Just do tracking, share with me. I also do my tracking, share back with you. So it doesn't enforce interaction between two workers at the same time. The same applies to LaTeX. We must set up our gates. Whatever you do, you push your gate manually, and then also edit and push back manually. But Overleaf is behaving like the normal Google Docs as well. Real time. Just invite me. I will join, observe it, and proceed from there. Real time. So it fosters collaboration, which these two guys cannot do naturally unless you go a step further to get it done. Okay. The offline access. This allows offline, no internet, but this you must be online to make it work, unless you want to pay for the offline version. So as you work offline, you sync it. You sync it and proceed from there. That syncing process is what is happening here through the gate for the actual LaTeX. The third part, the reason why we are here, is easier to learn MS Word, but it's a little bit not too friendly to look at the LaTeX part of it. It's a bit somehow okay to go for the cloud version, all because everything you need is pre-installed for you. But over here, you must do all by yourself, which again, in the next workshop, we shall learn the process of installation and how to handle errors and bugs as well. Okay. So here we are with the actual LaTeX process. As mentioned earlier on, I can pick any text file, notepad, any editor, and begin writing my code. Don't forget, at the end of the day, it might be stored as something. How do we store it? We store them as a text file. Just as we have the DOC for Word, or DOCX for Word, or PDF, in the same way we have .tx, TEX as an extension for your LaTeX file. So you do all your typing and save it as .txt. When you are done, because this TXT does not produce for you any output, you have to compile. So your compiler is required to do that. There are two main compilers you come across: the PDF LaTeX compiler or the Z LaTeX compiler. The purpose of this compiler is to convert your text file into a PDF file, which means at the end of your typing, the output is a PDF file after compilation. So we compile and get PDF out for ourselves. So the output is a PDF file. The input is a text file. When you are compiling, most especially locally, you come across these other extra files: the log file, the aux file, the BBL file, and so on. On the cloud, this information is not exposed to you. I mean, on Overflow, this information is not being exposed to you. But on a local machine, if you install it, you end up having all these things coming up. Don't waste so much time looking into it. They're only there to help you recover some of the files over time. The key thing is your text file, that's the input, and the output file, the PDF. The PDF. These are the things I believe you must pay attention to. Okay. Now, what happens to those of you who want to have it in your local machine? How do you proceed from there? If you're a Windows user, go and look for the MikTeX. If you want a lightweight version, which means only few packages are expected, then install MikTeX. But if you want every possible package to be available to you, then install the TextLive. The TextLive. The beauty is that this TextLive is also found in Linux. So in Linux, we do the TextLive, but I know there's a version called the TextLive Full. So normal TextLive gives you something like the MikTeX, but the TextLive Full gives you all the various packages expected. You proceed from there. For Mac, we use the MacTeX. Install it, and you're good to go. Here's the issue. If you install it, it doesn't mean you can program your LaTeX. So it says that all this I've explained to you is only the brain for the operation. It's not for writing. As I told you earlier on, this TextLive or MacTeX or MikTeX is behind the overleaf. So see overleaf as an interface to interact with the brain. So how do we also install our version of the interface to communicate with either MikTeX if you're on Windows, or MacTeX if you're on Mac, or TextLive if you're on Linux? How do you interact? This is where the following will help you out. The editors. So after installing all these back-end elements, you go ahead and install the IDE. So here, the Text Studio. For Text Studio, whether you're using Mac, Windows, Linux, is available. Install it, and this Text Studio will interact with the brain. So we do all our typing here. Overleaf, as I said earlier on, the cloud-based, is also an interface or an editor to the engine or the brain. Some other people also go in for the VS Code. Today, because of AI, it becomes even more prominent. to go in for the VS Code as compared to the Tech Studio, because you can just put in all the plugins and they begin to even code seamlessly, where your co-pilot can help you understand what you intend to write and proceed from there. So again, I repeat, the emphasis of this 3-day journey is not to make you an expert, but to give you a foundation so that any other thing you need, you can now query them from GPT and proceed from there seamlessly without any stress. But again, we'll provide our time to you for the entire year to help you build on any other thing you miss and proceed from there. The video anyway and the PowerPoint will be available to you. Feel free, read them, watch them, and then let us have your questions and proceed from there. The argument is, how then do you reach out to us with your problems? How do you get to us with your issues? What's the bottleneck? What have you tried that's not working for you? How do we come in to support you? Is it by phone call? Is it by email? Certainly not. Get to our LinkedIn page, go to the chat element, and communicate with us, and we'll help you come out from your issues. This is what I intend to take you through in trying to understand what LaTeX is all about. We will now proceed to look at the interface, the overleaf. So I have already, you don't need any special account to get in there. Just go to your browser and type overleaf. Sorry, overleaf. Hit enter, and then you go in for the login, or just click on the link. Let me see if I can just log out and then come to my head, log out. There's something I tell people to avoid most often. So I'm assuming that everyone here at least have either an ORCID account, because you're all researchers over here. At least anyone in our lab, we know they have the ORCID, which identifies you uniquely on the internet when it comes to research. If you don't have it, get one for yourself. Otherwise, use your Google account. But if you are here using Google, instead of spending time remembering your email and password and all those stuff, just go for the SSOs, the single sign-ons. Go in there, click on login with Google. Click on it, and then it brings you here. As we move here, we'll now upload our project. So I'll go to upload project. Here, what is our project for? So a member in our lab will share something quickly in the chat, download it. That's the template we'll be using for the class. Download it as a zip file, dump it here, and click on upload. Okay. So he will come back and then do it with you together. So you upload. Once you upload, it's going to show over here as your project. Your project. Open it up and proceed from there. Once you are done, you cannot invite people to collaborate with them. So as you can see in my collaboration over here, all projects, you will see all people who are working with me to look at their work. Because it's being recorded, it's unfortunate I cannot open any of them, because these are people's final year thesis I'm looking at. So I can't open them up, unfortunately. Okay, so here it shows 2 months ago, this person did an update. 4 months ago, 8 months ago, a year ago, a year ago, a year ago, in that order. So these are the 8 things I'm collaborating with. So imagine you have a problem. You just send me the collaboration link. You invite me. I'll join. Once I join, I can look at what you are doing and then monitor your progress and proceed from there. The owners are the ones you are seeing here as well. Okay. When I'm done, I can download this to my local machine as a zip file. I can also copy and duplicate it. I can also download the PDF version of it. I can also get into the archive or delete the whole project if I'm no more interested in this thing and proceed from there as well. When I archive it, it will show over here in the archive. So all candidates who are done or I'm done with them, all I'll do is go to archive and then archive them into this space. If I think your work is now over and I am not interested in moving on, I'll do a delete and proceed from there as well. At this point, I'll end my journey with you, and then the next presenter will pick it up and upload the real document, after which you will now go through with him how to build the whole process, how to compile, and how to get the output for supervisors. Today, many publishing houses are not demanding for LaTeX because of the issue of corruption. I'll send it to them and they'll tell me it's not scaling well, your captions are not well formatted, and so forth. So much frustration. To avoid that, they're not going to the LaTeX approach and get it done for themselves. Again, there will be a different section within the year to learn how to customize your template to suit your organization, either as a school, as in master's degree, in a given university. Now, what I've explained to you now is the general concept of LaTeX, but in this journey, we'll teach you how to structure your work for thesis documentation, the final document, the PDF. And if there's time, how to now build your PowerPoint from it, which means no more Microsoft PowerPoint. The PowerPoint in LaTeX is called the Beamer, Beamer, Beamer. So if you hear of Beamer, it simply means a PowerPoint, a PowerPoint.
Right. Thank you very much. And Albert Ankomadodu. So today we'll be primarily talking about the format approach, how we are able to format our documents in LaTeX, right? So we are going to learn the general approach to it, the fundamental knowledge, so that we can build upon it from there. So this is going to be our presentation outline, what we are going to cover for this particular workshop. And please, it's a workshop. So if you have any questions, any contributions, anything you need clarity on, do well to ask. And it's going to be hands-on. So do well to download the file I have shared so we go along together. So today we're going to be discussing the basic structure of a LaTeX document, some common document classes that are associated with LaTeX, and how can we even load packages? If we say packages, what are they? How can we even load them? We also talk about the session and the document structure proper. Then realize that in most thesis documents, we have various sessions, right? Where the major header, we have other sessions beneath that. We'll be talking about that as well. We'll also be covering line and paragraph spacing, how to ensure that your document is clearly spaced out to enhance readability and all that. We'll be discussing it. The page layout and margins will be discussed, headers, footers, creating lists, and an exercise. So probably close to the close of this workshop, I'll be sharing a PDF which contains a brief exercise that will cover all what we have been able to discuss so far. Right. So if we talk about the basic structure of a LaTeX document, and please, if you're having difficulties downloading it, kindly draw my attention to that, as I would want everyone to follow along. So with the basic structure of a LaTeX document, what is it? What does it entail? It has the document class, the preamble, and the main body. What are these? So I wouldn't want to bore you with more talk. All right, so let's go into it. So I'll be toggling between different interfaces. So please don't get confused. Just follow along as we do that. Right. So this is primarily the basic structure of a LaTeX document, right? When you open it, if you name the document, the name of the document would appear. So with this document, you realize that we have named it as the name of the lab. Right? Can I be heard? My
Yeah, you
network
can hear you
is
now. It's back.
okay. Just to prevent further interruption, let me just switch quickly so that we don't experience it going forward. Okay, so this is the document class. The highlighted portion we have over here is the document class. And with this document class, you can tweak it or change it based on your preference or what exactly you are doing. So here we have an article. We can change it from an article to something else, which we'll be discussing in further slide. And we can also compile, right? So if you are done with everything, you can compile. Sometimes you'd want to compile whilst you go on the go. What you do is you turn on your auto compile. So when your auto compile is turned on, it means that as you go on, your work is going to be compiled without you necessarily having to type out everything and now come back and compile. Then the package. After the document class, we have the package. So the package is where you initialize whatever you'll be needing for the entire work. So if it is figures you'll be needing, then it means that you need to have the package graphics. If it is mathematical symbols you'd be needing, there is a package for it, which we'll be discussing. If you need line spacing and paragraph spacing, there is a package for it, right? And one common observation that I think from whatever I've said so far, we realize is that LaTeX usually makes use of the backslash or forward slash. So I think this is a forward slash. It makes use of the forward slash a lot. So whatever you are doing, your forward slash is very necessary. So please keep that in mind. Then from there, you have your body or your body where you put your actual documents, right? So you realize that whatever we have here has been compiled and we have this. Okay. Now back to our slide. So that is it about the document structure. And with the document structure, we have the article, the report, the book, letter, the beamer. Those are the 5 thematic or the 5 basic document classes that we have in LaTeX. Now, if you are doing thesis writing, most often you tend to use either a book or a report. If you are doing thesis writing, you tend to use either a book or a report. And these are the common document classes that are used. If you want to have a PowerPoint presentation, you go with the Beamer, just as Prof mentioned initially. You go with the Beamer. So all these things, we are going to demonstrate it to see how they work, right? So as I've explained, these are the 5 document classes: article, And the article usually has to do with you having your short paper or assignment. The report has to do with your thesis or your dissertations. Books, when you have long reports you want to do, you make use of books. Then you have memoir. So if the advanced version of the thesis or books, that is when you have to make use of the memoir. Then the beamer has to do with presentation, PowerPoint presentation. Now, in regards to loading the packages, so in LaTeX, it is quite rigid, right? So whatever you do, you need to load a package so that the package is able to take care of that functionality you want to bring on board. Some common packages we have are the graphics, AMS Math, SetSpace, Fancy HDR, all these things have meanings. So graphics has to do with if you want to insert an image within your document, you use graphics. With AMS Math is when you have advanced mathematical formatting, and there are various variants of these AS Math if you want to use them. So if you want to use proofs, right, there is a particular package for proofs. If you want mathematical equations on the same line, there are packages for that. So the AMS Math basically means the American Mathematical Society, where AMS is a representation of that, American Mathematical Society, and it's just a standard approach that is being used. We also have SetSpace, and this is used to control your line spacing, your paragraphs and whatnot. We also have the way we can customize our headers and footers. There are more to it, but for the scope of this, we'll be limiting our discussion to a few but important packages that we need to kickstart our LaTeX journey. Now, with regards to LaTeX, you always have to have your package spelled down clearly before you begin the document or the main body itself, because in the main body, there might be certain packages that you want to make use of. So it goes to get that from the initialization process where you have your packages. Right. So we delve into exactly what we want to achieve today. So we have sessions and document structure. Now in thesis, right, primarily in the STEM area, this is how it is structured. You have your chapter, you have your session, you have your subsession, you have your sub-subsession, and you have your paragraph. Now, this image you have over here is depicting what we are talking about. So you realize that if you have chapter 1 as introduction, then the next session is going to be 1.1, right? A subsection of that is going to be 1.1.1 and what have you. So we are going to demonstrate this in LaTeX. Right. So how do we achieve this? So we'll first start by talking about, since we've talked about all these things, we'll delve straight into it. So remember I said we are going to, usually let's use reports for this particular work. So, and each one, based on how you format it, is going to give you a different appeal in terms of aesthetic or in terms of looks. So if we recompile, reports, there is an R, R-E-P-O-R-T. So when you compile this, you realize that it is looking different. The orientation is different from the former. If you go on to choose Beamer, it is also going to show something in the form of a PowerPoint presentation, right? So usually this is how your PowerPoint, the title page usually looks like, right? So depending on what you are doing, you can choose any of these. Now, I want to use a particular package that would make the process of writing easier, right? So that we don't spend more time doing the typing, okay? So we want to use one particular package. So you type use package, you hit enter. So it also gives you, smart, right? So you don't even finish typing whatever you need to type, then it gives you options. And if the options falls within what you want to do, you just hit on enter, then it provides it. So we are going to use Lipsum, and this is going to provide us with dummy text, okay? It's going to provide us with dummy text to be able to do whatever we want to do. So let me change this back to reports, since that is what I mentioned we'll be using. Right. Okay. Right. So in the document class, right? In the document class, there are options for you to choose from. If we put these two square brackets here, whatever we put in this square bracket are options. Okay, so you can specify maybe we want maybe the font size to be 12 points, then you bring a comma, right? Maybe the size of the sheet you are using. If you want an A4, you can specify it over there and all that. Okay, so we move on. So we are going to demonstrate session, subsession, sub-subsession, paragraph. Yes, so and paragraph, right? So now the begin document, this is where you do whatever you want to do. Your begin document. Okay, I don't know why these arrows are showing anyways. So your begin document. Now this make title over here, let's observe what happens. If we clear this make title and we recompile, right? What it does is that it takes off the initial title that we had, right? But if you want your title to be present, you just bring it back in there. Okay, so let's begin. We want to have a chapter. So remember I said the /, we always make use of that, your chapter. Then in our chapter, what do we want to have in our chapter? Let's say maybe we want an introduction. Introduction, right? Then maybe we want, okay, so let's go to the session. So from introduction, let's say we want to talk about overview. Okay, so remember we call the package called the Lipsum, right? So let's make use of that package over here, Lipsum. So this is going to provide us with a dummy text. So let's into bracket maybe 1, so that it provides us with some dummy text for us to work with. Right? So you realize that it has provided us with a dummy text. And it's not compulsory to do this. I just don't want to go through the route of typing out a whole lot of text, right? Just to make the process seamless. So that is why I'm doing this. So realize that we have a text over here. Now, this is a section, right? That is why we are having it as 1.1 overview. Now, let's say we want a subsession, right? We want a subsession. How do we achieve that? So we just, let's go one step downwards. Again, our / subsection. Then maybe our subsection might be, let's say, area of study. Area of study. This by no means means this is how it should be structured. This is for demonstration purposes. So area of study, if we recompile, let's see how it is displayed, right? So area of study is displayed as 1.1.1. So with most of us, right? I'm sure most of us have worked on some thesis documentation before. If you have not, well, this is a refresher course for you or something. So if you have your introduction, right, and you are moving to a next or a subdivision of that, it means that you are moving a step downwards. So from the introduction, you're having 1.1. The next one, if it is not a section, but a sub of that section, is going to assume 1.1.1. That's if it is chapter 1. If it is chapter 2, it's going to assume 2.1 for the section, 2.1.1 for the subsection. So it's in that order. Now, let's try to have some text over here. Okay, let's say 2, so that the text will somehow be different. Right? So we have it over here. If you want a subsection, let's be quick on this, since I think we have understood the idea of this. So subsection, let's say approach. Let's use maybe approach. I think my spelling is wrong. OACH, approach. Right, let's get some dummy text in there. Okay. So this is a subsection. Now you realize that with the subsection, it is not assuming any number, right? But it is assuming a paragraph on its own. So we have approach, right? And this is a subsection. Now let's see how a paragraph will look like. Then we move on to the slide again. So maybe sampling method. Sampling method. Then let's see. Some. So let's say maybe 4. Going further, I'll just run auto-compile so that we don't need to go back and forth with regards to the compilation. So now you see how the paragraph is looking. It begins on the same line with the words, but the subsection, it comes one step downwards before the content comes in. So this is what I wanted to depict or show you when it comes to that. Now, someone may ask, what if you want to initiate a new chapter? What do you do? Just like what we did, right? You can call out a chapter, right? When you call out a chapter, what do you want the chapter to talk about? Let's say literature review. Literature review, right? So let me just set this once and for all so I don't forget, right? So literature review, you want to talk about literature review. So this is going to auto-compile, right? Chapter 2, literature review. So because it is a new chapter, it has been codified in a way such that it will move to the next page, right? Just like how theses are structured. If you are moving from one major chapter to the other, whether there is a big space over there, you don't continue over there, right? You move to the next page, and that is what it demonstrates over here. So I believe the understanding with regards to section, subsection, paragraph is understood. So we'll move on to our next one, right? Okay. Okay, so we've been able to understand how all these are done. So our next slide is actually next slide. Yes. So our next slide talks about line and paragraph spacing. What is the difference between line and paragraph spacing, right? What are the differences? So line spacing is just the spaces between lines of text. If you have lines of text like this, just the spaces between them is the line spacing. Paragraph spacing is the spaces between the paragraphs itself. So moving from one paragraph to the other, the spaces between them is what we refer as paragraph spacing, right? And this is a simple image here to depict what line spacing and paragraph spacing is, right? So you realize that, right? Let's go into the code editor space and do that over there. So I'll just clear. Oh, well, it can even still be there. So let's continue with regards to the line spacing and the paragraph spacing. Now, when you come to the line spacing and paragraph spacing also, you need a package, right? You need a package. So if we want to have something to do with regards to line and paragraph spacing, right? We have to use a package. So use package, right? You have to bring up a package. And which package do we want to use? Maybe the spacing package. So set space, right? So this is for line spacing, okay? Now, if we want that of paragraph spacing also, use package. Then we have par, it's a par skip. Yes, so this is for paragraph spacing, okay? This is for paragraph spacing. Now we want to demonstrate the line spacing and paragraph spacing bits so that we understand that clearly, right? So let's use the second chapter we did for a scenario. So let's try and type something very simple, or even copy what we have over here, just a little to demonstrate that. So let's drop it in there. Let's create a subsection for that and drop it in there. The section. After literature university discussion. Right. Then drop this in there. So right, we have some content over here. Now we want to give it line spacing or paragraph spacing, right? So what do we do? So for instance, if we want to do this, right, we can just go here. Let's give some space first. A second. Let me clear. Okay, I think this is fine. So we can, and with the spacing, there are various forms of space. We have the single space, one half, double space, and all that. So let's see if, let's try this out. So let's say we want double space, double spacing, right? So let's see if it's going to give us some double space over here, right? So you see, it has been able to give us some double space. If we say a single space also, single spacing, right? Let's see if it's going to change, right? So we observe that that changes, right? So this has to do with the spacing, right? Now, let's also use this for an example. So if you have this, let's say one half spacing, right? And this has to do with the area of study. So you are specifying one half spacing for area of study, right? So you realize that if you are paying particular attention, the spacing over here is different from the spacing over here. This is because this part is single space, so it's automatically codified as single spacing, right? So you have to spell out, okay, I don't want single spacing, I want maybe one half spacing or double spacing. Then it does that for you, right? So that is it with regards to the spacing. Now let's say we want, that's for line space, we want some paragraph spacing, right? We want some paragraph spacing. Now there are two ways we can approach this paragraph spacing. So let me copy this same text over here. Let's clear this single spacing. Then, right. So now let's move to the paragraph spacing, right? Let's move to the paragraph spacing. So this is in the discussions bit. Now, let's take a close look at this part, right? If I give one space and it compiles, we realize that it is able to give a space. I don't know if that was observed. So if it hits the enter key between two paragraphs, it's going to give you a space, right? Now, as to the length or the distance between these two paragraphs, this is when the paragraph spacing comes in, right? This is when the paragraph spacing comes in. So assuming we want something like that, okay? So let's set the length, right? So, so set length, you hit enter. Now, what do you want to use? We want to make use of paragraph spacing. So parskip, 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 right? Then we can specify the amount of spaces that we want to have. So let's finish it and see if the error message clears, right? So we can specify that, okay, we want maybe one single space between that, and it will compile and give you that. Let's say maybe we want two. Let's see if that is going to work out. So we want two spaces, or the length should be two, right? So you realize that the distance between the two paragraphs has increased by virtue of the fact that we increased the length of the space, right? If we say 5, if that's not far-fetched, let's see if that's going to work out. Right, so the space increases, right? So that is the differentiation between the line spacing and the paragraph spacing. Now, with some people also, you would want to perform an indent or an indentation on the paragraph so that when we see an indent, then it rings a bell as it being a paragraph. So let me reduce it back to 1. Then, with indentation, you still have to set the length, right? Set the length, you hit on enter. Now, par indents. Let's see if that's going to work out. Then you have to specify the indentation, right? If it is 1, if it is 1.5, if it is 2. So let's try 1.5 EM. And please, the EM you are seeing over there is just for you to know it's just a notation, right? It's just a notation. So it has nothing to do with technicality. It's just a notation. So realize that we specify that in the indent, it should be 1.5. And we have a 1.5 indent over here. If it is not there, realize it begins on the same line, but when there is an indent, it moves or it drifts apart from the first paragraph. So this is it about line and paragraph spacing. Is the concept clear? Right. So I'll be moving back to my slide. So we discuss. Okay. Right. So that's it about line and paragraph spacing. I hope that is clear. So we move on to page layout and margins, right? So some documents, they specify maybe we want top margin of 1.5 inches, we want bottom margin of maybe 1 inch, left margin of this, right margin of this, right? And with that, you can also specify that in LaTeX. How is it done? Now, the package that you can use to achieve this is geometry. Okay, geometry is the package you use to achieve this, right? It might sound as a mouthful, but I think if you continue with practice after this, it should look normal to you. Okay, so we go back. Now let's make use of that. Okay, so we are saying we want to talk about margins. So let's use geometry, right? So let's use that package called geometry, right? Now we have the package in there, which means that whatever way we want the orientation of our text to look, we specify it in the document body itself, and it should be able to assume that, right? So we are using the package called geometry, right? Now we can specify the top margin, the left, the right, and whatsoever. Now remember that when we were starting, we mentioned that with a document class, you can give an option to it whether you have A4 paper, 12 points or whatsoever, right? But the class itself remains static, provided that is what you want to use. It runs throughout. Now, that's the same way you can also do this, right? So we can bring two square brackets, then whatever fits in here is the option you want to assume for your layout or your margin, right? So let's say maybe on the left side, let's give it maybe 1.5. And this is in inches, right? So we bring IN, right? And I think because we are even doing auto compile, I don't know if you saw a change, but let's move on and see. Probably the change will be clearer from there. Then maybe the right, you want that to be, let's say, this is 8, so right. You want that to be maybe 3-inch INCH, right? So it's compiling. So, okay, so now you see, we realize that the orientation or the layout has changed. So depending on whatever specification you have, you can change the orientation over here, right? And with this one, interestingly, you don't even need to go into the document, but because the body for which you would want these orientations to change is the content of the document, which we have some content over there. So if you make use of the package, it automatically runs through the content and gives you a preview of how you would want it to look like, right? So that's about it for how do you call it? The geometry, which has to do with the line, which has to do with the orientation, sorry, the layout, right? So that is it about the layout. Okay. Now there is one thing I forgot to tell you about, and I don't think it hurts for us to introduce that now. Okay. Now, sometimes you want to suppress your, how do you call it? You want to suppress maybe your overview, right? You don't want the overview to show. You want to suppress it. And by suppress, you want to take it off, even though it is there, but it's not visible to the human eye. What do? You introduce an asterisk after this. So let's see if that's going to. So you introduce an asterisk. Let's see if it's going to compile and provide us with what we want. Right. So you realize that there was 1.1 over here. Now you don't want the 1.1 to show or those numbering to show, right? So you can suppress those numbering. Probably you don't want numbers to be throughout your work, so you suppress it, then it automatically goes off. Let's try that also with the area of study and see how that also renders. So it's going to recompile, right? Then the area of study also goes off. Okay. So that's one thing I forgot to let you know. So as we go on, certain ideas will drop in and I'll chip them in, right? And I hope we are also practicing whilst we are doing it. If you feel I am moving too fast or the pace is too fast for you, you can let me know so that I slow down a little for you, right? So now let's return back to default. Let's take out these specifications over here. Okay. Let's wait for a while and see if that is okay. Right. So that is it about that. Right. So we move back to our slide. Okay. Then the next one has to do with headers and footers. And with this particular concept, it's a very troubling concept, especially when it comes to Microsoft Word, right? How to do this header and footer and how to specify where it should be, whether the header should be at the left side, the right side, the footer should be at the center, all these things. It comes with some form of headache, right? Let's see how LaTeX is able to render that and just oppose it against Word and see how easy it is to achieve it, right? So we go back to our code editor. But first, if no one knows what header and footer is, let me just give a general overview of what that is. So if you say a header, right? A header is mostly found at the topmost part of your document, right? And if you specify a header and you don't include restrictions to it, the header will follow suit throughout all the pages of your document, unless you tell the header or you bring out a you specify that maybe you want the header to be on just the first page, then you would have it that way. But if you don't do that, it follows throughout. Same way the footer. So the footer is always found at the bottom. We take it as a foot, right? The foot is always on the ground. So the footer is always found at the bottom, right? And the package in LaTeX that is usually used for this is the fancy HDR, where HDR here means header. Sorry, where the HDR here means header. So let's go back and see how we can achieve that, right? So with that, you may remember we said the package that we are going to use is the HDR, right? So let's make use of that package. So use package, right? Let's bring this. We said it's called fancy HDR, right? Now we have it over here, fancy HDR. So we want to show how this header and footer works, right? So let's clear this. I think they should compile. Okay, so let's move on. So we want to show how this header and footer works like. So now we are saying it is fancy HDR, right? So we have to make use of that. So fancy. Let's start with the header before we go to the footer. Okay. So we start with the header. Now, it has produced an optional part where you can specify and the compulsory parts, right? So let's say we want the header to be on the left part. So let's say left, which is L, okay? And with regards to the pages, right? Depending on the page number, we have an even page number and an odd page number. So 1 is an odd page number, 2 is an even page number, 3 is an odd page number, 4 is an even page number, and so on, right? So let's say we want the header to be only on the odd page numbers. What does that mean? So LO, let me make it capital. So LO, right, which means that left side, but it should be what? Odd, right? Now, what do we specify inside? So what we specify inside here will be the contents. What we specify inside here will be the content of our header, right? So let's say maybe the content of our header should be, let's say maybe header, 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 let's say area, right? Header area. Now, we have it over here. Maybe we want to make it bold, right? It's not showing yet. So maybe we want to make that bold. So what do? We bring our /, then our text, BF. Let's clear this X, put it in here. And let's see if that's going to compile. It's not bringing us an error message. Okay. So let's see if it's going to compile again. Wow. Interesting. So let's just continue and see how we can make it work. So let's say maybe we want
Can you check the brackets, number of brackets?
yes. Let me see. The number of brackets left odd text header area. I think the number of brackets should, okay, let me add one. Let me see. Okay. So let's see if that's going to work out. I think that should work out. Okay. Okay, so that worked out. Thanks. So now we have the header to be this way, right? But before that, right, we have called the package already. So what we have to do, we have to initialize that. So we are using the fancy header and footer, right? So let's see if fancy HF. And let's see if it's going to display. If it doesn't, then we find a different approach. So interesting. See how this header and footer approach is even stressing us over here, but we will find a way around that. So let's try. Come in, let me see if what the problem would be over here. So, yeah, it's fancy. So let's specify a page style and see if that's going to work. So page style, and that is going to be, let me see why. Let's see. Wow, interesting. Okay, still compiling.
So if that
Sorry, it's
doesn't
not
work,
showing.
what we'll do is we'll add it to the CLS file directly for future use instead of this
Okay,
find it directly over here. So you can
come
consider that,
again.
you can consider that in the star file in the future for them instead.
Okay,
This is not working directly here.
okay, all right, sure. Okay, so okay, then let's continue with the next ones. But if we are done and there is more time and the time is not fully exhausted, we'll come back to address this, right? So we go back. Now we talk about creating a list, right? And with a list, we can either itemize them by using bullets or we can enumerate them. And by enumeration here, we mean numbering, right? Having them numbered in an orderly format. So those are some of the types of numbering that we can have. And with numbering, let's go back and so this image over here is just a simple demonstration of how that works out, right? So let's try and see if we can achieve this. Right, so let's get rid of some of the packages to make it easier. Okay, so since this didn't work out, let's clear this. Right, so now let's say we have, okay, so we cleared that. So let's say we have a chapter, right? So we have maybe a chapter. Then the chapter is called maybe let's demonstration of list, right? Demonstration of list. Okay, good. So you have it as demonstration of list. Now we have to itemize, right? So how do we achieve? We are itemizing, okay? So how do we achieve that? So we just have to begin, right? We begin, then into bracket. What do we say we want to do? We want to itemize, right? Now it gives you the opportunity to list the items you want. Okay, it gives you the opportunity to list the items you want. So let's say we want maybe problem definition, right? Then the next one we want to itemize is maybe, so we also have to write the item again, right? Then maybe you want to maybe collection of data, right? Right. So you can go on and on and on with regards to the item to get the number of items you want. So let's say data analysis. Right. So this is just a depiction of how itemization work, right? So this is a depiction of how itemization work. So let's assume we want to create maybe an ordered list, okay? Let's say an ordered list where it has to do with enumeration, okay? So let's create a session for that. So let's create a section and call the session maybe numbered list, right? Numbered list. Now, what do we want the numbered list to contain? It's an enumeration, so we have to begin the numbering process, right? So begin the numbering. We said we want to enumerate, so we have to spell out exactly what we want. So there's an error. So enumerate, right? Now, what do we want to enumerate? Let's just give some. So maybe food, item, drinks, item, US. I don't know if that's the right spelling. Yeah, so you get a concept. So the numbered list provides you with what? Numbering, right? It's able to provide you with numbering, right? So this is how that is also depicted. Now, we have what we call a nested list. What is a nested list, right? A list within a list. That is what we refer to as what? A nested list. Now we want to create that. How do we do that, right? So let's have a session. It can even be a subsection, but let's just take it. Let's have a session. Then we are saying we are calling it a nested list, right? So that's the name of what we want to do, a nested list, right? Then you have to begin, right? So maybe the nested list, we want to have it itemized. So itemize it, right? What do you want to have in your nested list, right? What do you want to have in your nested list? Maybe you want to have maybe the sources of data, right? Maybe so data sources. Now this is where how do you call it? This is where the nesting is. So you have data sources. Now you want to have a list within a list. So you have to begin again so that you start a new list, right? So you have to begin, right? And maybe you want to, because we are having bullets for data sources, let's not use bullets. So let's say we want to itemize, right? We want to itemize. What do we want to itemize? Maybe data sources. So because we're talking about data sources, let's talk about the types of data sources. So maybe primary data. Then we have item as secondary data, right? So you realize that this is a nested list, right? You have a bulleted point here for data sources, and under that, we have the variants or the categories of that, which is the primary data and secondary data. So this is how we perform nesting, right? This is how we perform nesting, just like the idea of programming with the nested loop, how that's the general concept, right? So a nested list, this is also how it is done, right?